It doesn't sound very exciting, but KYC is more and more an absolute important part of our everyday operations. No matter what you are, if you're an operator, if you're a player, if you're a regulator. But I have to say, and I have to start off by saying, KYC are three little letters that if I'm an operator, I don't like to hear those letters because it means a hurdle for my player in my mind. And if I'm a player, I don't like the three little letters K, Y, and C because it means you're asking stuff of me. So maybe let's start by, saying, if we focus on the Philippines specifically, but in general, how has the sort of perception changed? And is this still accurate that it's a hurdle and it's something unpleasant, or is this maybe an outdated way of thinking?
Maybe I can start off with from the compliance point of view. So obviously we are in a compliance space, and definitely we want KYC to be there, right? Because this is our business. But seriously speaking, I think that there can actually be a balance between being compliant, having good KYC, but then still maintaining the user conversion, and making sure that as much as possible we make it a much more seamless process. Right, so I think right now everyone is already very familiar with how KYC is done, especially from the consumer point of view. Right, we know that it's about showing your ID card. We know that it's about doing your face recognition. So those are things that people have already come to get used to and accept, right? But obviously there are still some differences in how different KYC providers do this, and I think that over the course of the 10 years that we have been in this industry, we have actually been constantly optimizing it, right? So we recently just crossed 400 million KYCs worldwide, right? So we actually are very familiar with the intricacies of working in different markets, including the Philippines. So as a result of that, we have actually constantly been tuning the process so that it's much easier for customers or for end users to be able to onboard with any business, right? And I think from the operator point of view, the other aspect is, a lot of operators, they say that KYC actually gets in the way of operations because obviously they want to be able to onboard users, they want to be able to onboard these users very easily and stay compliant with PARCOR's regulations. So we have also been helping them to actually better optimize this whole process so that it's actually going to be much easier for them to onboard customers and stay compliant. So I think that that is probably slightly an outdated way of thinking, especially if you see banking, right? They are probably on the second or third iteration of what KYC should be like for the industry. So I think that we are definitely moving towards something that's more better for users and easier on the operators as well.
On the operator side for S5, at first, when we first started back in 2021, like what you said, KYC is a three-letter word that it's a little bit, players or users find it a little bit iffy, put some terms. But I think the adoption on the fintech space and also the adoption on everyday life help for people to open up and understand more what is KYC. And for the operator side, we also need to be creative in a sense that to increase the adoption and not make it as a barrier of entry for our users. Okay? So, for example, we do some incentives for KYC submissions, and we also do some level of progressive KYC so that it's not gonna be for our users to try out our game offerings or our products, that it will make them, a little bit, in terms of the user journey, it will be a deterrent on their user journey.
And in terms of the Philippines, how do Philippine consumers perceive KYC? Because I know there are some countries where it's almost like you killed their firstborn if you ask them for KYC. They are so scared that the government might find out, which is probably not a problem here because what you do is legal. That probably creates a difference. Well, what's the attitude from the Filipino consumers like towards being asked for ID and being asked to all this stuff?
I would say it's quite okay. More often than not, because they were only being asked for primary IDs, such as driver's license, passport, or the universal ID. I think the part where if we will ask more about source of income or we will put numbers or quantify their KYC, that's the time that they will hold back for a bit.
So what we call EDD, like extended due diligence, where source of funds, is that where people then go, I'm not showing you my bank account?
Some people are a little bit, shy to share.
Yeah, and I think maybe to add on to that, right? So even if you want to do enhanced due diligence, right? I think that the denominator for operators is actually to get as little information as possible. So I think which means that actually we don't have to do like enhanced due diligence for everybody, which means that you actually have to be good at actually identifying who are those that we actually need to do further due diligence on. So if you have enough data points about users they're probably not just from the ID and the face, but also from the other what we call the signals that these users are giving you. For example, the devices that they are using, the time of the day, where are they coming from. All of these things actually helps you to narrow down to who are these people that you actually need to do a further validation on. Right, so I think KYC providers can also play a part in helping operators make it easier for users, so that you are not setting the bar so high that nobody can actually get through get into the system.
So you can use these processes then to, for example, create your customer risk assessment, which depending from regulator to regulator is like, for example, back in the Isle of Man, it's a requirement you have to have a COA. For every player, it can be as simple as an A4 sheet of paper. One would hope these days we're a bit more advanced with that. So if your tools can help with that, obviously that would be a load of the operator's mind.
Yes, yeah, I think exactly. Because when we talk to operators, right, we understand that this market is a volume game, right? There are a huge number of players. So if you don't have very effective tools that helps you to do what we call data analytics, you will not be able to handle your player base very very well. And obviously, obviously you will not also not be able to be compliant to PACOR, to regulation, right? Because you don't have enough data points to show that you actually understand who your players are, and you are actually monitoring them and doing your due diligence on them effectively.
And yeah, just to add, it's a constant balance game for operators like us, like compliance on PACOR side, and which is quite clear cut. But also on how we would utilize this KYC information, progressive or not, on how we could also contribute positively in our operations. So yeah, it depends on the player profile and the data points that we will have that we can make a more informed decision.
And one question that I think would be interesting, because I've come across this before, is when it comes to KYC, so the basic KYC, you get it from almost everyone, but then say you have a VIP player or VIP players, and you need EDD, you need source of funds, source of wealth. Now, again, back in the Isle of Man, our laws say you have to get it, but it doesn't actually say what you have to get. It doesn't say you must get this document in order to prove source of wealth or source of funds. Yeah. But and we all know when you deal with VIPs, you don't want to bother them. If I have a big client and I suddenly go, excuse me, sir, can I please see your bank account and your family's wealth? They're going to go, no, and they leave. So we're scared that they leave. What's the approach in the Philippines in terms of higher net worth, high wealth VIP players, and how can you sort of keep them happy and not, but at the same time, so not bother them, but at the same time stay compliant?
On my end, on the compliance side, I mean, not to share some trade secrets, I just give
that's all we want to know.
A good set of incentives so that they will be more enticed. And then at the same time, I give the confidence that this information will not be shared to anyone not relevant and will be only part of compliance.
Yeah, I guess that's also when providers, your reputation and the compliance program that you have in-house. Because we are serving regulated industry, but ultimately, we are collecting very sensitive user information. So that's when you need to make sure that you are also compliant to global privacy regulations like GDPR, making sure that your IT security is up to scratch. I think that goes a long way in supporting the operators in giving their players confidence that whatever is being shared is going to remain confidential.
And once you know who a player is, obviously, so you've proven who the person is, you're complying with your regulations, your regulator's happy. But there's, of course, a lot more you can do with that information, right? So what other uses do you see being used either by technology or just in general once you have KYC data, what else can you do with that information to aid your operation?
On my end, I use those information more on for recent fraud. If there are any potential or down the line that might be duplicate accounts or multi-accounting. So we use that info, especially coming from the technology side of things, so that we can manage on the fraudulent activities.
I think that I've also been hearing from a lot of operators that they have this problem where, like what Sir Greffin just mentioned about bonus abuse, about having fake users coming just to get bonuses. So for us actually, even though Sumsub is probably better known as a KYC company, but ultimately we are a whole compliance platform, right? So for those whatever information that we gather from users, right, it actually has a lot of use later on in helping us to monitor these users, to make sure that what they told you on day one, when you keep monitoring them, the activities that they are displaying, the behaviors that they are displaying, is actually constant with the profile that they have actually told us on day one. So we actually do use a lot of those kind of information to have a better understanding of users, so that later on, when we do a monitoring of these users, we can be more effective. Like I mentioned, the whole purpose here is actually to be transparent to users, but at the same time, being able to provide a lot of data to operators to help them to figure out what is their user base actually doing with them.
And I assure you, I'm not being paid by Sumsub, but because I work in the field, licensing, compliance, that kind of thing, you do have a reputation for being really, really good, but not necessarily cheap. There are cheaper guys who just do your basic KYC check. Well, what would you say, why should I choose a more complex, total, maybe more expensive solution over something that just checks an ID and this is all I need. I just need this ID checked, check some, go away, 50 cents per check. Why should I pick you who costs more over something simple? Is there value in me as an operator to pay more attention to this?
Yeah, I think definitely, because like I mentioned earlier on, right, a lot of if you're not doing your KYC well, later on actually you will suffer, right? Because if you don't even understand who are these players, are these real people? So imagine, right, we onboard a lot of customers. The solution is actually very good at letting players in, but they are not very good at identifying, whether are these duplicate accounts, whether are these fake users, are they in here just for the bonuses? So later on, you're going to discover that in terms of losing a marketing budget to these kind of bonus abusers, you're going to pay a lot more than just the small amount that you are paying for a better or more premium solution like Sumsub. So I think it pays for itself during the whole lifetime of a user.
And Greffin, because you're active in the local market and we're talking about the Philippines, in this regard, what are the biggest challenges you see with Filipino players? Like what are the kind of things, the issues, the problems, the challenges that come up when it comes to getting them through the door and KYC and player behaviors?
I think there are also a good chunk of players that unfortunately doesn't have the valid identification. So the non-ID citizen, or there's also a lot of users that provide, for some reason, fake identification. So just to piggyback on what CW said, for me, the fee is the face value, or the face value only. But the real benefit is for me spending marketing budget, spending the time and effort of the company on the real players that I really want in my platform. So that's the value driven, or having a good compliance product with us.
So you're using it to prevent fraud already. And is there a lot of fraud here, or is it a very honest crowd?
I would say there's a substantial number of fraudulent activities and bonus hunters here.
Okay, well, bonus abuse. Obviously, it's a new market. You're always going to get, those people coming out of the woodwork, so to say. In terms of technology, we spoke about AI, of course, earlier. It's a topic that's everywhere. It's a topic that I know is very powerful, or can be very powerful, if you focus on the actual proper stuff, not on the ChatGPT jokers. Where do you see AI fitting in this from a local standpoint, is there other plans for you to use AI-powered tools or use it more in identifying, for example, fraud? And in general, is it something that can aid in making this even smoother than you already make it?
Actually, I want to share a bit on the last discussion I had with CW and his team that internally, we built some AI tools that will aid us automate KYC. Because early days, I just assigned people to just do KYC all day, every day. And that's not a good practice, right? So we tried to build on our own. It's working, I would say, quite well. 60 to 70% of our KYC checks are being handled automatically. But the key word there is KYC checks. I want to take it further by doing the full compliance check. So that's the part where I really need a full compliance platform rather than just automating KYC. Because KYC, like someone sent a picture of a cat, auto-fail, or fake ID maybe, or wrong name from what they submitted and what's in the ID. That's, for me, that's easy on the technology side. But knowing and digging a bit more, as a company, I would rather go with a product that is expert so that I can focus my energy on the business that I'm in.
Yeah, and I think for us, artificial intelligence is definitely core of what we are doing. Right? A lot of the things that we are doing is actually making use of artificial intelligence to improve the whole process, be it the account opening experience or how good are we at catching fraudsters. So I think for AI, right, it's actually more of a double-edged sword, because while operators like S5, they are using AI tools to actually be more effective at doing their KYC, but the flip side is that consumers, they are also getting much more familiar with how to use AI to get past your checks. Right, so like if you just search for a face swap app, on your app store, right, you're going to come across a lot of options out there where you can actually do a face swap very easily. Right, so even your 15-year-old kid, right, he's going to be able to use his dad's ID, right, and then he can do a face swap with his father. Right, so that's how easy it is for consumers nowadays to get past those checks that providers are actually implementing. Which is why also that in the past 2 years, right, because we serve a lot of the global clientele, and deep fakes using AI to get past KYC checks has been something that's been going on for a very long time, right? And we have basically built all of these tools in house to be able to better identify who are these players, who are these people, are they really showing their real face, or are they actually showing you somebody else's face, right, using a face swap. Right, so I think those are things that we have to be really good at technology to be able to defend against these kind of attacks. And I think the other thing that we are seeing right now is this whole thing about underage players, is a threat to the industry. Right, if we are not able to address this properly, and it becomes a social ill for the country, right? We are getting players addicted at a very young age. Then obviously it's going to be bad for everybody in the industry, right? Because you are going to be facing a lot more scrutiny from everybody, and then there's a much higher chance that the industry could be even more heavily regulated than it is today. So I think being proactive about showing that you actually have planned ahead to actually address all of these emerging challenges, I think that's one way that operators can actually protect themselves. And make sure that they are ahead of the game.
Actually, it's really good that you mentioned AI, people using AI, because that was sort of my next question. Because I know it from the area of writing. I have friends who do a lot of content writing, and they obviously use ChatGPT to write the articles. But because the agencies they work for will know that they used articles, he's using another AI tool to humanize it again. So he uses an AI to defeat the AI detector, so he uses ChatGPT to write it, but he knows there's an AI tool that will detect that, so he uses another AI tool to defeat this AI tool. It feels like sort of an arms race. Is there a risk we have the same here? So using a tool to detect if I use a face swap app, but then I use an even better instant avatar, so I can pass your likeness test with my fake passport. Is there a risk we're in sort of an arms race of like one-upmanship?
Oh, definitely, it is going on right now, right? Which is why we have also evolved beyond just looking at simple things like deepfake, whether is this person actually using face swap, or is he using deepfake, to actually even looking at behaviors. You know, because like it's exactly what you mentioned, right? People catch on that you can actually detect whether am I using a face swap software, so they might evolve to other methods. Like for example, if you look at the scammers, right, they will actually have all ways to go and persuade even like real users to go through the KYC for them on their behalf. So which is why we have also evolved into being able to look at like behaviors of people when they are going through this KYC. Like, are they a willing participant in this KYC or not? Because it could be, on one side, it could be that, you know, they are using technology to do it. On the other side, it could be that they are using something so simple as in like getting other people to do KYC for them. Right? So we have to be good at defending both sides to make sure that, you know, we are actually helping the industry and the operators to better gatekeep, you know, this whole, their whole operations.
Have you seen any AI players trying to slip past your checks?
There are some, but in terms of, again, I'm gonna err on the operator side, spending the time and energy trying to catch this. I would say that level of sophistication on the player base that we have, it's not there yet for me to invest and focus on that. So, yeah.
So it is happening, but not a lot yet. So.
I hope it will not grow.
Well, yeah, iTools are getting more and cheaper, but one of the other things that's always on my mind is as well, so if you read through most of the regulations, taking the Automatic example again, because I know they're regs, but most are similar. Most of them will say you have to satisfy yourself that you know the identity of your player, and that he's of legal age and so on. But nowhere does it usually say, certainly not in the Isle of Man regulations, you have to get his passport, you have to get his utility bill, you have to get X, Y, Z. Nowhere does it say that. It says you have to satisfy yourself that this is the person. So it could be that I know you, and I know you're a certain age, and you live here, and it's you. Technically, that could be compliant. Now, I'm thinking, because we use technology so much, is there a way that, you know, in future we're not going to be asked to send our passports and our utility bills anymore because you can use technology? And do you think that regulators, if you went to Paco tomorrow and said, hey, I have this new AI tool, it checks the open web, it checks everything to verify a player, can I use it? Do you think regulators will be open to that? Because it seems still very archaic, even though you use all this tech, you're still checking my passport and bill, and it still seems a bit outdated.
I think that you know, maybe for now it might be difficult to get past that, because ultimately, you know, KYC is about identifying you as a person, like who exactly are you. So we do have some ways to actually make sense of you know, your identity. So for example, if you give us your phone number, right, I can actually go and check, you know, whether do you have an account with Facebook or with Google, and what is the name that you actually put on your profile. Right, and I can even get you know, the Facebook profile photo, right, to go and do a comparison. But ultimately, you know, when we talk about KYC, about identifying real people, you still need to a certain extent, you still need to be able to get their real identity, get something that's trusted, which is why I think that you know, for now it might be a bit difficult. But we do see, like for example, in the Philippines, they are coming out with this FUSIS, right, which is an easier method for people to actually go through this KYC without even showing any of their identity documents. But that is more from a perspective of making things easier for your user. And of course, I think ultimately it's also much more secure, right? Because you know, you'll get past the issue of, you know, having all these fraudulent identity documents. Right, so definitely we are moving towards alternative methods of performing KYC. But ultimately, you know, this real world identification of your real world identity still needs to happen to some extent.
And I think on the regulation side, they still would want to have some paper trail, and that's why we still need to do the capture of identity documents.
And maybe a more technology-based question. The Philippines is a mobile-first market. Back in 10, 15 years ago, when I did one of APET's first ever mobile site, we had to get 1,000 different phones because it's 1,000 different Android brands and things that, you know, Western, iPhone's easy, but then you go into the Androids. How did you find the technology market here? Is it easy to get everyone to do this? Are all the solutions working on all the different phones? Because you get smartphones from 1,000 pesos to, you know, 100,000 pesos. They all have different specs, different networks, different everything. Is there a challenge in the local market to get the technology to work, or are we at a point where it just works on any phone?
Based on our experience, there are some instances that the technology or the device has limitations, but I would say it's not as, in terms of sample size, it's not that high. But what we do is we just aid the users to, to capture the data. So I think my answer is, yeah, it's not that substantial to be really considered.
I think same thing for us. I mean, the lowest denominator, the devices that people are using, they are already quite advanced, in terms of like even, let's talk about the camera, right? So it won't be the case where like maybe like 10 years ago where, you come across a lot of problems of people not passing KYC simply because their camera is not good enough to go and capture a clear image. So I think we are already way past that in terms of the internet penetration in the country, in terms of the devices that people are using, is already good enough, as the common denominator for us to be able to work very effectively with the users here.
And one type of product that I saw in the past that seems to be coming and going, of course there are some blockchain solutions and things. There's a company in the Isle of Man as well who do something which is sort of a portable ID or KYC. So the idea is that you verify, I think, once with their app. There's multiple ones who do it. And then you use this one ID with essentially everyone because they pinky swear that, this is really you. Do you see any point in this kind of solutions, or is it better to, because maybe from a player point, if I don't have to, the idea of course is I don't have to prove my KYC with every operator. I do it once, and then it's on some blockchain or some other solution. Do you think there's mileage still in that, or is it so seamless now that it's not a problem to do it with every casino I go to?
I think there's definitely still advantages to doing that. So in fact, that's something that we have been doing because we serve most of the global cryptocurrency exchanges. Like I mentioned, we have already verified more than 400 million people. Right? So when it comes to being able to allow people to get through KYC easier, we have launched something called Sumsub ID, which basically allows people to actually keep their identity information. And when they move between different businesses, like right now I'm actually onboarding with Binance, the next time maybe I'm onboarding with S5, right? I should be able to bring the identity with me to S5 so that I don't need to capture those images again, right? I don't need to make sure that, my ID image is clear enough, to get past the verification on S5. I'm already coming with something that has already passed verification in Binance before, right? So I know that this image will definitely pass the KYC over there. And then, to make sure that to introduce security, we still make people go through the selfie, right? Your liveness detection and selfie matching to make sure that you really own that piece of identity. So we have been actually doing that to help our customers be better at onboarding their users. So all of these developments that are coming out of Sumsub, they are basically two reasons why we are doing all of this, right? Making sure that conversion is better, and also making sure that we can still gatekeep for our customers.
I think the additional, the value add for me on that one is if Sumsub or any provider will be able to link up with a negative database, or especially like the exclusion list from any jurisdiction or here in the Philippines, because a pass on Binance might not be a pass on S5 because that user is excluded on the PACOR database, right? So that could be a more holistic approach. But I agree that in terms of conversion and efficiency, that's going to be a preference.
And the side of the responsible gambling side is actually quite important as well going forward, because like I keep saying, there's no point in harming players. Nobody wins if the player loses all their money. We want something that's sustainable. I know we used to have, again, Isle of Man, because of experience there, we used to have a central register where you could email the regulator and say, hey, my name's Frank, please exclude me from all Isle of Man licensed operators because I have a problem. And then they would send an email out, and we all had to reply within 24 hours and block any profiles. And that got shut down because of GDPR. Because they actually found out after like 10 years, we're not actually allowed to send player names in this way. So is there like an anonymized way to do this a bit more elegantly these days? I think this is, and would you be willing or able to use this in both ways to protect the player? So have an anonymized central register where it says these this player ID should not be playing, but you don't see the name, but you know who it is. But to also protect you from fraudulent players, where other operators say, hey, these are not good guys, let's work together. Is there potential in that kind of thing?
I think here, because the data is owned by the regulator, so it should be, I mean, should be an open, that register should be open, and that should be also, to make it anonymized, there should be some level of technology to make it happen. And for our, as operator like me, to access it directly and almost real time. Because if that user already is playing, but I cannot access it real time, that information, then it might be over before I will be able to exclude or ban that player.
I think definitely the technology is there to implement such things, right? It's whether does the industry and the regulator want to work together to implement that. But on the other level, right, in terms of like responsible gaming, I think again back to also being able to identify vulnerable players much earlier, so that we can actually, like for example in the UK, right, the regulations is actually for responsible gaming. It's actually more of a proactive actions from operators, right? So you have to have some ways to identify these players early on, and you need to also have the tools for them to be able to exclude themselves very easily, right? So I think that there could be two parts to this equation, right? One is actually having a central registry where everybody can actually very easily exclude themselves. But the other part of it is actually whether operators can also use technology to identify vulnerable players earlier, and reach out to them, help them. Ultimately it helps to reduce the stigma of gambling being a social ill on the community.
And one thing I have to ask is, you mentioned you do a lot with crypto companies and Binance and so on. How do you get hardcore cryptos or maxis like me, who love our privacy, how do you get them to give you KYC? Because KYC is definitely a four-letter word in certain areas there. Yeah. How do you get those guys who really don't like that concept? How do you persuade them?
I think that the whole space is the whole space of unverified users is actually shrinking very fast. Because really in the past few years, or in the past decade, where cryptocurrency actually started becoming more mainstream, more popular, we have seen that there are the so-called Binance, which are the centralized exchanges. They have been actually cooperating with regulators. They have actually been making sure that this whole industry is actually safe from money laundering, right? Whereas on the other hand, we have players who are the so-called decentralized exchanges. They are still holding out. They are still giving some people a level of anonymity to be able to still be able to participate in this space. But we actually see it shrinking very fast, because right now I think that even for cryptocurrency, it's become mainstream, right? It's become just another financial product. It's become just another way of doing my payments. So ultimately, anti-money laundering regulation is catching up with these players in the space as well, right? So I would say that it's not a choice that people have, right? If you want to partake in this whole economy, in this whole system, you have to be compliant to these anti-money laundering regulations as well.
And that's just where the whole industry is going, right? It's more and more regulation. There's no escaping this one. I keep saying that. It's like you may be in a gray market now, and you may be flaunting some KYC regs and compliance. It's going to come, right? I mean, do you think the Philippines is in the right direction? Do they get the balance right between protecting the players, protecting the operators, giving you an environment where you can work? Is the balance there to say it's working?
For me, I would say it's working. In a sense that that's the goal of having regulation and having regulated players or service providers like ours, right? So, but it doesn't end on the regulation side. As part of the service providers, we should also work together to push forward the regulation and to make it a more holistic and a more good environment for all operators, for us to prosper and move the industry back to a better place.
And you're obviously also very active in the Philippines. You see it as still growing, the balance is right, or is there something that your clients come and say, hey, we would like this, or this isn't working, or help us with this particular local problem? Is there anything you could share?
I think same observation. You know, the market is definitely moving very fast towards you know, being more matured. Right? I think in terms of how the regulations from parkour, you know, how operators are, you know, complying to regulations, and you know, the whole industry, you know, how is it operating? I think it's becoming much more matured. We can see that you know, there are a lot more operators now. It's become a much more competitive space, and you know, parkour being more careful about, you know, complying to AML regulations, so that, you know, to get the country off the grey list. So I think the whole industry actually, you know, from last year to this year, the kind of conversations that we've been having, you know, with the industry players, they are actually very different, right? This year, people are a lot more aware about what is going on, about you know, how can they be actually a responsible, you know, stakeholder in this whole industry. So it's actually very encouraging that, you know, the industry is actually moving very fast, and it's actually, you can see that it's actually becoming much more mature than maybe when they first started out a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the rise of the local market has been incredible. It's just insane how quickly it's grown to millions and millions and millions of players in absolutely no time. So clearly there's a massive interest here for it. I don't know how many minutes do we have left, guys? Can you put it on we have a little screen here that usually tells us how many minutes we have. Let's ask. Because maybe we can open it up to the audience if you have any questions. Because the only question I can think of right now to ask you as well is, where if I need it and if the regulations are neutral on it, where in the user journey would you ideally place KYC if it's required?
For me, it's the end KYC, meaning the full KYC. I would require it on first-time withdrawal. Yeah.
Right when I deposit for the first time.
But in terms of the initial check, especially for each verification, should be during sign-up. But the full KYC, I would put it on first-time withdrawal.
So would you do a passive background check on sign-up for PEP and sanctions, for example, or would you request specific information from a player on sign-up?
Right now, what I'm doing is I would like to get the data capture or the identification check on sign-up. And I would also like to automate the exclusion list during sign-up, because it doesn't make sense that I already let the player register or sign up and then ban him because he's excluded. Right.
I think I agree. At every stage, you should be at least able to get enough information to make sure that you're compliant, right? So like to take the example from Sir Greffin, you know, maybe at the very initial stage, you know, what I want to do is to, number one, make sure that this player is not underage, right? And underage, usually how people will do that is based on the ID document, right? But what if I can just, you know, because AI is very advanced now, what if I can use AI to estimate your age of the player, and, you know, block him if he obviously looks underage, right? We don't want to let this person in, right? So you can actually use some kind of technology to do this as well, so that you know, maybe we can just onboard him first, and later on we start getting some real identity information from him. So we can always use technology to do that.
Okay, that's a really cool idea actually, to guess the age of a player. So we have 10 minutes left, it says on there, which I'm sure we can fill. What else is there? Where else do you see your product going from just a purely, you know, you said you're a compliance platform, a whole solution. And like we said before, the future is just filled. The only jobs that are safe, even with AI coming, if you work in compliance, your job is safe. You pick the right field because it's getting more and more and more and more. Now, if I'm an operator, again, compliance is a word that makes me cringe because it means I have to employ more people that cost a lot of money. You know, I don't understand what they do. We didn't need them 20 years ago. Why do we need all these people now to tick all these boxes? Do you think like you have a role to play to keep the operators happy and earning more by taking a lot of this really, really undesirable workload off us? Because nobody likes compliance. We know we need it, but we don't like it.
Yeah, I agree with you, right? I mean, right now it's actually more of a necessary evil that people have to like be compliant to all of these regulations. So definitely we are trying to make things easier for our customers. So like I mentioned earlier, right, We are not just here, as a KYC provider to help you check boxes, right? Like this ID is okay, the face actually matches. We also want to make sure that there is actually a practical or there's a real impact on your business, right? So for example, like I mentioned about being able to catch underage players very quickly, right, upfront, without having too much, using too many services that are costly, or or having a lot of people to actually do this kind of manual checks. Right, so so I think that definitely we are trying to help the industry, do this better. And the other real business impact I mentioned was actually, defending your marketing budget, right? If you are onboarding all of these fake users, then obviously, it's going to cost your company money. So I think that's something that people don't quite understand about KYC companies yet, right? That KYC shouldn't be about ticking boxes. It should be a combination of helping you make compliance easier, and at the same time, having a positive business impact on your revenue.
And how do you handle compliance locally? Are there things where you wish it would be more streamlined, or in future you hope would be more automated? Is it how much of a challenge, or inconvenience is the wrong word because we need it, but how much of a challenge is it? How much time does it take up? And do you think it's just going to get more, or are you hoping for guys like CW to make your life a lot easier going forward?
I mean, like what I said earlier, as an operator, I would rather spend my energy and investment towards to contribute on the business or more of the gaming side of things. So if I will have a technology partner or product that will make my life easier, that's the way I want to go. And just to add also, it's not always like what CW said, ticking the boxes on KYC check, but on a very granular level, like on the marketing budget, operational budget, it all plays a part. If you don't gatekeep upfront, maybe the user journey, each operator will need to be creative on how they would like to do it. But if you don't gatekeep it upfront, you lose more down the line by catching these people late.
And one question I have to ask is, because the Philippines is such a politically active country, it's so many people, so many politicians, so many men at levels. PEP and sanctions checks. How busy are you with, how many PEPs are there running around on your, is it a lot? Because or how far down the line does it go?
I would say we do check, but I would, as an operator, I would need help to have that centralized registry to really check further.
And so PEP and sanctions, PEPs themselves, they're not a problem per se here, right? You can accept politically exposed persons as players as long as you know, or are there restrictions on it?
So for our operations, I opted not to accept.
Okay, so you can just say straight away. And do you just go by the PEP itself, or family, or? Because we all know politics in the Philippines is very much a family affair.
We do on the PEP itself. Of course, the family or family downline, I have limitation to determine who are those. But who are in actual position, sure, we do.
And that's down to every operator to make their own risk assessments? Or?
I don't know with other operators.
But what do the rules say? Like it's your decision not to do it, right? So others may be even stricter or more lenient?
So we refer to the negative database provided to us by PAGCOR.
Okay, that's very sensible approach, actually. That's probably what I would do as well. Obviously, you have PEP and sanction checks in the background. That's a given. So we have about, I think, 4-5 minutes left. Any questions on the floor on KYC, how to make it easier, or anything you want to know about it? You have in the Philippines the two experts here. Let us know. Okay, no questions. That's always good. You know the guys. You have them on stage. Grab them after if you have questions. And if you want to give, maybe a closing remark of where you see it going, and what do you think the future is, or what do you think the take? If someone's here as an operator and he wants to get into the Philippines and get a PIGO license, which I know are still popular. I think we're at 70, over 70 now. What would you tell them in terms of this aspect of the requirements, the KYC aspect, what's the key thing, the key takeaway anyone who wants a Pico license should know, in your opinion, from an operator and from a provider?
On the operator side, I mean, right now, it's still very important or a key thing to have that paper trail. So getting the identity capture, the required details by PAGCOR, it might look tedious as a user, or if I'm the player, but that's also part of the regulation which can protect us, or at least protect us down the line rather than not having it at all. And like what CW mentioned, it's a volume game. So there's really going to be a lot of data that can be, KYC data can be used on other information or other purposes as an operator. So we just don't think of it as just KYC check, approve, fail, or resubmit, done. Right, so yeah.
I think from our perspective is definitely try to plan ahead, try to think ahead about what is going to come, with the regulations getting tighter, and that's where you can probably refer to what the other regulatory regimes are doing. I think that it's just a matter of time that the Philippines regulation will also catch up to them, right? So when you are actually looking to work with partners, in the technology space, do look out for what is the solution that they're providing to you, and what is their vision, and how far ahead are they thinking ahead of the curve to keep you compliant, so that later on, when you actually face these kind of issues, your technology provider should ideally already have some solution in mind for you, right? Because they have experience working in other markets, they know what is coming, and that will actually help you to basically differentiate yourselves from your competitors, right? Because the market being so crowded right now, you definitely will want to be able to show to the regulators that I'm ahead of the game, right? And you are I'm somebody that maybe should be an example to the whole industry. I think that's maybe some my 1 cent on what people should be thinking about.
That's a really good closing remark, using KYC to stand out and be different as an advantage rather than a disadvantage. I love that. That's the most perfect closing remark we can have. So I think we're just about out of time. So thank you very much for joining us after lunch.